I was in a church service and the pastor was quoting on the gift of talents. And he went through 5, 2, and 1. And then he said, and for anyone who feels as if they have no talent, listen to me. Your life is a precious gift. You got one job. Say yes to being used for good.
Hi there, I'm here with John O'Leary, who's the subject of a new movie called Soul on Fire. It's going to be released October the 10th, and it's really about John's life story. He was burned from head to toe, 100% of his body, when he was 9 years old. That is only one of the remarkable things about John's story. The thing that amazes me is that you had a fear of public speaking. And now you're going around the world talking about your story, encouraging people as time goes on. And I'm just thrilled to be able to talk with you today, John. So why don't we go ahead and start with that right there? Public speaking. In the movie, you actually are just speaking to a group of Girl Scouts and you throw up on the street. Is that true?
Everything about that scene, Paul, is true. And you mentioned John is afraid of public speaking. That's true, but it's not just that. It's John was afraid of his own reflection. John had no belief that his life had value. I mean, if you really want to like just cut through it,
Yeah.
that's what's really going on in my life and in that shot in the film. And my life changed. It's not as clear, I don't think, in the film, but about a day or two before that scene, okay, I was in a church service and the pastor was quoting on the gift of talents. And he went through 5, 2, and 1. And then he said, and for anyone who feels as if they have no talent, listen to me. Your life is a precious gift. You got one job. Say yes to being used for good.
Wow.
So I hear this message. I write it down in my little journal that night. I go to work the following day in a construction field that's not made up. This guy who's been burned terribly as a kid, who has no fingers still as an adult, is working carpentry. The call comes in. A little girl says, will you speak at my school? And my first thought was, about what? Like, what would I possibly speak to your school about? And as we made our way through the conversation, she said, Mr. John, I read that you got burned terribly and you survived. Would you share that story? And the only reason I gave her that yes, this awkward, introverted nobody, that's how I felt about my life, is because the day before our pastor had said, John and family and community, for those of you who feel like you got no value, listen, your life is a precious gift. Say yes to being used for good.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. It must have been, even to say that yes, and leading up into when you were actually speaking, those must have been terrifying moments.
But listen, you and I are recording this on today, and I leave the office later on today and head out to speak to a group of Marines. Every one of the Marines has been wounded in battle,
Wow.
and those who weren't wounded in battle were wounded by themselves once they got home. So tonight, I have the honor of loving on our heroes, man. But I'm promising you, as I walk in, I'm going to feel that same anxiety that I felt before I spoke to 3 Girl Scouts. But what has allowed me to speak to those girls 21 years ago and
Yeah.
2,700 groups since, and now the Marines tonight, is I recognize God is using this story. None of this is about me. It's not how articulate I am or how well my hair is groomed back. None of this.
Yeah.
It's about the ability to humbly serve the one in front of you, and then to remind them through the power of your life that in spite of the struggles we face, God is still God. The foundation's still firm, and the best is yet to come.
That's fantastic. That's really great. So since we're talking about stories, let's go ahead and talk about the story that's coming to screen, Soul on Fire. It must have been kind of a surreal experience to have a movie made about you. You know, that's not something that happens to everybody. And when you're talking about your own story that has so many twists and turns and some very literal and emotional and even spiritual pain attached to it, the journey of making this movie must have been a challenging one.
Well, 8 years ago is when it all began. I was speaking at a conference in Las Vegas. I'm a Midwest guy, but I was out in Vegas speaking, and a woman named Linda came up and said, John, it's the most remarkable story I've ever heard. Have you ever thought of turning that into a film?
Wow.
And like any normal human, I said, no. Right? No, dude, please. I got to get home. My wife needs help getting the kids in the bathtub, man. No, I don't want a movie. And she said, would you mind if I tried? So
Mm.
I said, yes,
Yeah.
you can try, do what you want to do. And so she tried. Eventually the script was written. Eventually it passed in front of a guy named Sean McNamara. McNamara did a film last summer called Reagan.
Mm-hmm.
He did a film a couple years ago called Soul Surfer. Like this is a polished director. But man, I'm not a Hollywood guy. So I flew out to meet him. And as we're having coffee together in LA, I said, Sean, why do you do what you do? And he looked to the right and then he started crying. And then he looked back at me and he said, John, I believe in keeping people alive. I think in sharing true stories
Wow.
about true people who've been through true struggle, we can keep people alive. And I recognized as this big burly director's weeping in front of me, like this is the kind of guy I can say yes to. It's the kind of guy I can hitch a wagon to and run through walls with. So Sean has proven himself to be faithful and good and humble,
Yeah.
industrious. He attracted this all-star crew around him of not only the guys behind the camera, but the folks in front of it. And they, not me, this isn't my story, but they told this beautiful story about a little boy getting burned, about the family that surrounded him,
Yeah.
about grace that covered over him during that time, about the mistakes he made afterwards, about how the love he still received in the years to come, about a girl that shows up even when I don't feel worthy of it.
Yeah.
And ultimately about the faithfulness of God. If we get over ourselves and keep saying yes to his will, not ours.
Yeah. Yeah. You've mentioned saying yes a couple of times already in this interview. That can be a hard thing for many of us to do, because you have the fear, you have the doubt. That's part of what your ministry has always been about, right? To encourage people to say yes to helping others, to say yes to God. Can you unpack that a little bit? Where did that philosophy come from?
Man, I think most philosophy comes from the dinner table. So I was blessed to be raised by, and I'll cry about it because I wasn't ready for this line of questioning, but my dad was my hero.
Mm,
Passed away 2 months ago. And I was lucky and blessed to see the film with my dad right before he died. And the last words he ever spoke to me was in the theater, actually. I leaned over and I said, Dad, what do you think about your movie, man? And my warrior dad, he had Parkinson's disease for 33 years, looks back at me and says, John, what a gift. What a gift. And so I learned that as a child, we're called to serve the one in front of us. I saw my dad model this throughout every single step of his life when he was on top of the world, like employed fully and never been sick. And I saw him employ this when he had nothing,
mm,
when he had Parkinson's and lost the ability to, burn through cash and speak and everything else. He was joyful. He was always of service to the one in front of him. So I
yeah.
witnessed that at home. When you first started asking the question, though, I thought of my radio announcer guy you met in the film named Jack Buck.
Oh my goodness. Turned me
And
into a St. Louis Cardinals fan, I got to tell you.
man, there's room on the bandwagon. So come on. And Jack Buck, for those who don't know him, was the broadcaster for the Cardinals for 50 years, 50. And although I'd never met him, he was my hero as a kid. He's the one that broadcast baseball into my bedroom every night. And then I got burned, as you saw in the film, on 100% of my body. Should have died immediately. Survived just long enough to make it into that evening. And Jack Buck had been at a charity auction that day and learned that a little boy in our community was burned and was going to die. So that's the diagnosis he got. The
Mhm.
boy is burned and going to die. Well, Jack hears this greatest generation type of guy. He leaves the party, it's a true story, goes out to a burn center to visit a stranger. You talk about like living out the gospel. Like goes to visit a stranger, walks into my room, my eyes are swollen shut. He doesn't know that.
Mm.
Sees this mummified little boy, and then he says, through my darkness, these words that woke me up literally. He says, Kid, wake up. You are going to live. Keep fighting. John O'Leary Day at the ballpark will make it all worthwhile. Keep
Wow.
fighting.
Wow.
And he stands, he walks out, he leaves me changed. He's told by the staff I'm going to die. And then the following day, in spite of their diagnosis, this man comes back to serve. And then he comes back the following day to serve. This is a stranger.
Yeah.
I'm not a person of affluence. I'm nobody. So he served my family and I for the 5 months I was in hospital. It's a lot more to the story than that. But what he taught me in this time was this: when you have an opportunity of serving, the answer is yes.
Mm,
So this is your question, John. Where'd you learn it? The answer to service is yes.
wow.
Then you go back. It's not transactional. It's not a one and done. It's not checking some box. Then you go back.
Yeah.
Then you bring friends. So Jack started bringing other ball players. He brought Ozzie Smith, Terry Pendleton, Andy Van Slyke, football Cardinals at the time, blues players at the time. He got Billy Graham and Pope John Paul II and Ronald Reagan to start writing letters for this little boy. He brought friends. And so there's something powerful in life when not only do you say yes, even if you're afraid, because who's not? But when you have the audacity to go back, bring friends, and then you wash and repeat.
Man, that is so beautiful. That is so beautiful. One of the things that I think of as I watch this movie, when you talk about your relationship with Jack Buck, it is one of the most powerful moments of the entire movie. I won't spoil it for the audience, but the relationship takes an interesting turn toward the end. And
Yeah.
one of the things that I loved about the movie is that the director, Sean McNamara, you were very transparent in the things that you not only did right, but the things that you did wrong. That is so important, I think. Why make that decision? Why expose yourself to saying, that guy screwed up in that moment?
Yes.
Was that a difficult
Again
thing
and
to
again.
choose?
Man, for me, it was easy because I know me. I saw myself in the mirror this morning. I'm not trying to be humble. Like, I'm so broken. I lean into grace. I lean into my family. I lean into others still.
Yeah.
And I'll put it to you this way: two ways to answer your question. First is when they did the poster for the film, they did a big old picture of the guy who plays me in the movie, a guy named Joel Courtney. He was in Jesus Revolution last summer and a bunch of other films. He's a great guy. But they put a picture of him, a victory shot with his arms in the air, looking at the camera, like, look what I've done in my life. So I wrote back to Sony and I'm like, hey guys, read the script. It's not about Joel. So when they redid the poster, it's a picture of his back to the camera now, silhouetted. And if you look closely, the whole poster is made up of images of others. None of them, in other words, are about John or Jack or Dad or just one hero. Because we're
Yeah.
used to seeing just that one evidence of a hero, Superman, the Transformers,
Yeah.
whatever it is. This is community. And you saw the film, so you saw what my siblings did in the front yard. That's not
Oh,
Hollywood.
yeah.
That happened.
Yeah.
It was filmed even in my mom and dad's front yard. So all these evidence of courage and heroism and love led to this little boy going on to live his life. So that's one way to answer it. The second thing is when I requested the actors to join us in this film project, like I reached out to William H. Macy and I said, Bill, you're going to be playing a guy named Jack Buck. Look him up. You're going to be the hero of the film. So he said yes. And then I reached out to John Corbett, for my big fat Greek wedding. And I'm like, hey, John, good news. You're my dad. You're a man's man. You're the hero of this story.
Yeah.
He said yes. I reached out to Stephanie Shostak from Iron Man and all these other shows, told her the same deal. But then I reached out to Joel, who plays me, and I said, Joel, good news, bad news. Good news is the film is full of tons and tons of real heroes. The bad news is you're not one of them, buddy. Will you do this? Do me a big old favor, man, and just play me in this film
Oh,
because you aren't a hero. But by the very, very, very end, Paul, you saw it, man. You realize it's true. At the very, very end, you start to recognize your role in this and your role in making a difference for others. Will you say yes to that? And he did. So I live a life where I recognize I'm not the hero. And isn't that cool to recognize you're not, but you
yeah.
can be a hero in someone else's life?
One of the things that as I was watching this, it's interesting you mentioned this because you're very mindful as you go through the movie about who influenced your own life, because we all stand on the shoulders of those around us. We all have heroes in our own life, and sometimes we forget about that. And that's the thing that I think I took away the most from this movie. From where you sit, what would you most want people to take home? What would you want them to think about as they head home from this movie?
Gosh. I mean, the one of the priorities of the way we told the story is for them to recognize O'Leary is not the hero. Most films, you see a hero quality in the main character, and in this one, you really don't. And that's very intentional. We could have written the script very differently, trust me, but we wanted to make sure the light was shining where it should have been on others. We wanted it also to be very clear that it wasn't just the radio announcer in his Hall of Fame career. As importantly, we're 7-year-old siblings, minimum wage janitors, college roommates, people who just showed up in normal, ordinary ways to love the one in front of them. It reflects in no small way God's goodness to all of us, that your life can be used. And so then maybe the final thing I hope they leave with are the final words my dad spoke to me. And it was in a theater. It was in early May of 2025. As people were clapping, I said, "Dad, what do you think? What do you think about your movie?" And he said, "What a gift." And what he was really saying there was not, it wasn't Siskel and Ebert reviewing the film. It was a man who I think recognized before his kids that the end was near. Having a quick life review of the ups and downs of his journey, and that the struggles did not ultimately define him, and that the fire did not necessarily define us, and that the adversity we all faced and the addictions we all struggled with did not define us. But God's goodness worked through all of it. And by the end of the film, and hopefully by the end of our lives, we recognize when we say what a gift, we're not talking about the characters up on the screen. We're talking about our life. And regardless of where you are today in your life, like yours matters. John did not know that until he was in his early 40s. Don't be like me. Don't be like me. Your life today matters. That is so good. That is such good news. And you can do such mighty things with it going forward.
Man, listen, John, what a pleasure to talk with you. So appreciated your time. This conversation has been a gift to me. Thank you so much. And
what a gift, man. What a great way to wrap.
I wish you the best of luck with this movie and best of luck as you go forward. Thank you so much for your time.